5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. YouTube says we're live. I believe YouTube. YouTube never steered us wrong before when it said we were live. So glad you're here. Thanks for being here. It's Wednesday. It's 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's a different time depending on where you're at, maybe, possibly. Who knows? But thanks for being here. You are the coolest people on the face of the earth, whether you're watching it live or later on the replay. Tonight, it's all about you. We're going to be doing a bunch of Q&A type stuff. We're going to be answering your questions, talking about fish tanks, and boats. Because now we're just going to do primetime boats.
I saw the coolest thing today.
Yeah?
In like a...
Was it a boat?
It was. It was actually in somebody's yard. It was like a regular boat, like the like a fishing boat, like the silver, and it was filled with plants and fish.
All right, you can buy me a boat.
I thought that was cool.
And a truck to pull it.
Yep.
Anyway, thanks for being here. Glad you're here. Glad you're hanging out with us. So, yeah, today we're just going to be talking about stuff, cool fish stuff. Hopefully, you've got some questions that you. Oh, man. Marley, it's our boy Jason. That's right, everybody. Hello. What's up?
That's right.
It's your boy Jason right here, bringing it to you live on Primetime Aquatics. And that's your girl Joanna.
No.
Yeah, it's your boy Jason and your girl Joanna bringing it fully live. Okay, that's as good as I can make that. Horribly. All right, we already lost half the viewers. Thank you. So things that are happening. What's happening, Raj? Well, the videos that we had coming out Sunday, I did rummy nose tetra, not the rummy nose rasbora, but the rummy nose tetra. I did a species profile on that. I think that's what I did. Yeah. And because I just saw a totally awesome tank at Aquatics, and I thought, if I'm going to talk about the rummy nose tetra, this is the tank that I want it to showcase. So it was Brooklyn Bell's crew and Stephen P. 2000 Aquatics. He wasn't there, but it was his crew. I'm like, oh, love the tank. They had some big, juicy rummy nose tetras that I just absolutely had to feature. So that's what I did on Sunday. And then we fast forward right on to today. And what did you do? What have you been doing with your life?
Well, actually, it also had to do with Aquatics. It was a video that I actually, there was a part of that I wanted to bring you since Dallas. And I got the footage. And it's just, the weird little things that I noticed that a lot of people don't. There you go. I just felt like sharing.
And I will tell you that when I watched the video,
did you?
95% of what you showed, I did not see in Chicago. I didn't see it.
Thank you.
There
My
was a
job
booth
is
there
done.
that you said was like 3 different vendors. I'm like, I don't know where this was. And you showed some other things. And I'm like, I walked by those booths, didn't even see that stuff. So apparently, I missed a whole bunch of things because you know what I do on the Aquatics videos. I personally just like to focus on the aquariums. I like to focus on the aquascapes and the fish. And yeah, you did.
I search out
a very cool thing.
Weird little stuff too. Yeah.
Yep. So, all right, hold on, I'm going to take care of something real fast and done. Okay. So, yeah, that was what's going on Sunday and Wednesday. And tomorrow for our members, we'll have a members video coming out. And then fast forward to this coming Sunday, and I'll have something else out. What that is, you'll have to wait and see. It's a surprise. It's a surprise for everybody. So that's kind of the story there. The other big news for the week is, and I put this all out on Instagram and Facebook and even on a YouTube community post, we will be at the Greater Chicago Cichlid Association Swap this Sunday, which is the 30th. That is in Northbrook, Illinois. All of the fish that we're going to be, the fish that we have available for pre-order are on the website, primetimeaquatics.com. If you're in the area or in the Midwest and you want to take a drive, definitely worth checking out. The GCCA swap is a big one. I would say that one and the Quad Cities, that's a little bit further west towards Iowa, on the border of Iowa and Illinois, are probably the 2 biggest swaps, certainly. And I'm assuming that, well, not assuming, but I'm pretty sure they're the 2 biggest swaps in the Midwest at least. So a lot of vendors. I think the GCCA swap is usually somewhere between 70. I know they've gotten as high as like 90 vendors. So a lot of different stuff, anywhere from nanofish to big cichlids to small cichlids to all kinds of shrimp and wood and rocks and plants and pretty much anything you could ever want for your aquarium. It's going to be there. So That's what's happening. That's what's happening this week.
Good times.
That's what's happening in our lives. So, yeah, Stacy, thank you so much for the super chat. In addition to propagating, the leaves on the Java fern in my tank are outlined with loads of light brown stringiness. I haven't found any info on this. Any ideas? I have an idea. Tight brown stringiness? What? Why are you looking at me that way?
No, because you said I have an idea.
Oh, yeah, what's your
Maybe
idea?
light brown stringiness.
Well, that's how I read it first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of think you might have the beginnings of black beard algae, unless it's kind of like a harder stringy, thicker stringy. But did you know, by the way, we are getting a rather interesting black beard algae breakout in our 40 gallon with our gold sebrum. It's all over the fake plants you put in there. It's getting
Really?
pretty excessive, like to the point where I'm like, oh.
Do you think it came in with the fake plants?
Yeah, I think when you put the fake plants in, it brought in a bunch of black beard algae. So
I'm gonna have to do a
that's
video
the
about
latest
that.
thing. Yeah.
Danger,
I've put in
danger.
Fake plants.
Fake plants.
I don't know how it got there,
That's
but
weird.
and it's growing. It's definitely very bushy coming off of the fake plant.
Huh.
So yeah,
Weird.
have fun with that. I blame you.
Yeah, and I don't have any ideas what that could be on the Java fern.
Yeah, well, like I
First,
said,
when I heard stringiness, I thought like roots, because the Java fern has like these little skinny little roots. But
Yeah.
No,
yeah, that's my
I
first
can't say
guess.
I've ever seen anything like that.
Well, unless you've seen black beard algae.
Well,
which
no,
you
I mean
have.
like
That's my guess.
Yeah.
Without having seen it. John, thank you so much for the super chat. How to raise KH but not GH? My pH is very unstable. Hold on, it's moving around. I mean, keeps dropping to, what is that, 5.5 to 6. And I believe it is due to low KH. That is true. KH between 0 and 40, while GH is above 180. I have ember tetras and a hill stream loach in the tank. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty low. It'd be nice if you could get that in the upper sixes, mid to upper sixes at least. So if you want to raise KH, there's a couple ways you can do it. Way number one is you can use a buffering salt. So like Fritz Aquatics has the African cichlid salts buffer that's going to add a little bit more KH to your tank. The other way to do it is using a product like Carib C cichlid mix as a substrate. That can certainly help. Aragonite can help, and so all of those things will hopefully buffer or increase the KH a little bit and help stabilize the pH. You're going to want to do it in small amounts, see what happens, because right now your KH is very low and your pH is also low. So the last thing you want to do is go from like a 5.5 to 6 all the way up to a 7, 7.5 and do that in the course of a day or two. That could certainly stress out your inhabitants. So those are probably the easiest ways to do that. What you got over there? Because we're just into it, man. We're just getting right into it.
Heck yeah. All right, so this is fun. Nate wants to know any advice for a larger centerpiece fish for a 55. I have an angel, 20 rummy nose, a bristle nose, 3 pearl gourami, and it's densely planted. Thinking maybe a blood parrot or a flower horn.
All right, so a 55-gallon planted, yes?
Yes.
Angelfish and the pearl gouramis. So I would consider your angelfish and the pearl gouramis to be kind of centerpiece-like. 55 blood parrot. Don't do the blood parrot, because that thing is just gonna. They don't necessarily dig, but they're gonna tear through all those plants, and they're gonna probably terrorize your fish, because the angel's like a relatively calm tank, and so do your pearl gouramis. There's a chance a full-grown blood parrot would try to eat rummy nose. I'm not saying they'd necessarily be super successful at it. The flower horn is a fish you only keep on its own. So flower horns are a kind of like a water puppy. Get at least a 75-gallon tank, if not larger. You put that one fish in there, probably just better off doing bare bottom, because they love to dig big, giant pits whenever there is a substrate, and keep it minimal. And it's more of a show fish, so definitely not something you'd want to put in with other fish, even other cichlids, because they are very rowdy. Other options, I don't know if there's a lot of big options. So on a 55, you could try like a Geophagus tapajos, all right, just one. I wouldn't do any more than one with that setup, because it's running pretty good now. full-grown rummy nose, it will most likely leave alone. But if you had a larger Geophagus taphoholus and you put that in and the rummy nose are still pretty small, like an inch or less, they might go missing. But I would probably try something like that. If you wanted to try like a Bolivian ram, or maybe, 55 gallon, you could probably do a few. Same thing with the German blue rams, or just the German rams in general. They got the electric yellow rams as well, which are kind of cool. I'd probably stay that direction because your rummy nose, anything larger than what we're talking about here is probably going to get eaten. What else you got over there? You're slacking on your job, man.
Well, no, I was reading Glad You're Feeling Better, Whip. So I hope that means that, Whip, you are indeed feeling better.
I hope we're all feeling better. Everybody's feeling better. Dennis, do tannins lower pH in your tank? If yes, then it's not recommended for fish that love high pH. Is that right? So tannins can lower the pH in your tank if your KH is low. So a lot of it depends on your carbonate hardness, because that's the buffering capacity. In other words, that's how the KH is basically a measurement of how stable your pH is going to be in that aquatic environment. So the higher the KH, typically the more stable your pH, but also usually the higher the pH. So if you add, let's say, driftwood or botanicals or choyawood, like for that stuff, for our tanks, it really doesn't do much. And our KH is around 10 degrees. So it's not like it's off the charts crazy, but it's still high enough. The buffering capacity is high enough that when we add driftwood, when we add catappa leaves or choyawood, it's going to turn the water brown, but it doesn't really do that much to our pH. In fact, I would say maybe it'll go from like an 8 to a 7-8. And that's if it's a decent sized piece of driftwood. If your KH is lower, then you could potentially crash your pH a little bit if you added a big piece of driftwood or a bunch of botanicals or choyawood or something like that. So that's kind of how those things are linked together. All right. What else you got there?
Oh, and Lynn has a migraine tonight, so she's just watching.
And you just chill.
Yeah, chill.
Just chill to
Turn
the next
volume.
episode.
Turn the volume down.
Yeah.
Turn the lighting
whisper.
down.
Hello,
Migraines
everybody.
stink.
We're just going to talk like this. Ted, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Ted didn't say anything, but if he pops up with a comment, make sure you keep an eye on that. Thank you.
Okie dokie.
All right, let me see here. We got Barstow Goldens, member for 2 months. Thank you. Appreciate it. Looking at freshwater gobies for one of my 20 longs instead of otos, which I have in another tank. Are they relatively easy keepers? I think they are. A lot of the Stiphodon gobies, they stay pretty small. Those are easy to keep. We've done Rhinogobius, Henechuensis, very easy to keep. Really, they're quite entertaining. So if you get a group of them, the way they interact with one another are pretty cool. We've done the purple spot goby, not appropriate for smaller tanks or smaller fish, but we've had those for a while. I wouldn't put them in a 20 long, but those are fun fish. So look at the Rhinogobius, the Stiphodon, like the blues. There's blues, reds. We've had a couple different types. Like I said, they stay small. They're good for a 20 gallon. Sometimes they can be they can hide a little bit, but yeah, I like them. Now, they're not going to necessarily, you said instead of otos, they're not going to really, I didn't notice any of mine ever eat algae or anything like that, but they're bottom dwellers. They like to eat food off the bottom. So, yeah, they're cool. I like them.
Okay, that's great. Let's see. I lost it. The chat just went. The chat's
Someone's
doing
got
really,
chat problems.
Yeah,
Well,
really
Kiwi
weird
said,
tonight.
do blood parrot cichlids get more or less aggressive as they grow up to full adults? It's pretty much depends on the individual. The ones that I've kept they got a little bit,
Happy?
they wanted to get more aggressive.
His name was Happy.
Unfortunately, what happened was they also grew up in a tank with other cichlids that wouldn't allow that, because as they grew, they started to realize the blood parrots really couldn't do any damage. They've got that mouth issue where they really can't fully close it, so they can't bite down on other fish. So what winds up happening is they can be belligerent and they will chase fish around and they can stress fish out a little bit. But then if you've got other cichlids in the tank, once they realize, hey, you know what, they really can't hurt me, sometimes they will start chasing the blood parrots around. And that's what happened to us in a couple tanks, where I finally had to separate them and put them in a tank with non-cichlid fish, because once they started getting bullied, it was so sad. They would just kind of hide and be like, oh man, this is horrible. So we'd move them around until we found a situation that worked.
From Thai Sharks Fan 6. What would cause my water to turn green? I do bi-weekly water changes and gravel vacuuming. And let's see, we've got OH 6.8.
That's probably supposed to be pH.
pH, okay. Thank you. And then ammonia 0, nitrates 0. Nitrates are only 5. Lights on 7 hours a day.
All right, well, so...
It's going for like 2 months now.
Yeah, usually when you're talking about green water, it's because one of two things is happening. Either your nitrates are high or your lights are on too long. It doesn't say in the comment whether or not you've got a planted tank, but one of the ways to deal with that, one of the ways I would deal with it, if it's a non-planted tank, is I would do a massive water change of probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% if it's non-planted, and then I would probably cut the lights off for at least a week or two, where the only time the lights even remotely come on is I turn them on, I would wait about 10 minutes for the fish to wake up, I would feed the fish, and then off they would go again after they get done eating. Yeah, it's not the best thing for the rhythm of the fish, but if you've got a green water situation and your nitrates are in check along with your light, which 7 hours isn't that much. Now, the other thing too is a couple things. One, is that tank anywhere near a window where it's getting daylight? Because that is definitely going to contribute to green water. And the second thing is, if you're leaving the lights on for 7 hours, is it 7 hours straight? Sometimes it's actually better if you break that duration up into maybe like a morning time when you're going to be around the fish, and then evening. So that may help as well. All right, let me see here. Pardon me.
Oh, and Bunny Viper, whenever you want that shirt, just get it. It's waiting for you online.
All right, there you have it.
Glow. It's my new favorite version.
The glow.
Love it. Yeah. Really into black and white shirts. Although, see, there you go. Chattanooga Ed just totally got me for this one. I loved it. Had to have it. It was a must-have from the old Aquashella.
That's what happens at Aquashella. Stephanie says, so excited. I got 3 male butterfly split fin goodeids along with 4 fries. That's cool. Yeah, the goodeids or goodeids, depending on how you'd like to pronounce it. Heard it both ways by experts in the area. Yeah, we've got some Scyphia multipunctata, and I got them. They were pretty small. They're in a 20 long. And even at probably 3/4 of an inch, the males are already starting to get like the yellow and black spots and the big giant dorsal fins. They're like little cute miniature versions of the adults. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those things grow up.
Do you want to hear 2 really fun facts?
Just
I random.
Suppose. No, I only
totally
want to
random.
hear one fun fact.
Okay, well, you're going to get 2. First is, do you know that about 25% of the population has never had a headache? I heard that somewhere and I was shocked. Who's never had a headache? That's
They're probably
amazing.
less than 3 years old.
Oh, that would have
Hey, little baby.
funny.
Have you ever had a headache? What's a headache? When your head is pounding and you can barely open your eyes.
I'm going to put you down for 25%.
I don't think so. Okay, well then there you go.
Do you want to know another funny fact? Speaking of shirts, because I do have a t-shirt problem.
75% of people wear shirts.
No, I actually counted about how many t-shirts I have. Would you like to?
I don't think I want to know the answer to this question because there's usually stacks of t-shirts. It's one of these things where she decided to take the small closet and I took the larger one. I like to hang my t-shirts.
Oh my gosh, he's got so much more clothes than I do.
I have certain categories of t-shirts. I have my t-shirts that I wear out. I have my t-shirts that I wear when I ride, and I have my t-shirts, which is my Harley shirt collection, which is way out of control. And then I have my t-shirts that I wear when I go to the gym. But those are all leaving the house, like visible shirts. So they have to be hung. I don't like them being wrinkled. So I got the larger closet. She took the smaller one because she was going to fold all these things. The problem where I was going with this is most of the time she's got stacks and stacks of t-shirts that she's organizing all over the bed, all over the floor. So please tell us, how many t-shirts do you have?
Yeah, because I actually had to get like baskets and stuff for them. Approximately 150.
Do you see?
I like T-shirts. What can I
Everywhere
say?
we go.
Now I don't know if that's accessible or not, because a lot of people have way more shoes than I do. You know, a lot of people have a lot
Well,
of
you
shoes.
used to
I
have a
used
problem
to.
with shoes. This T-shirt thing,
I
I
used
will
to.
admit, is a lot cheaper, and it actually takes up less space when you
Yeah,
fold
you
them
can get
all.
cool
crunchy.
ones at the G-Dub or
Yeah.
the Savers. But anyways, just thought I'd share.
Oh my gosh, Andy said, Ring said, I have only had one headache, and I am 58 years young.
You've only had one headache.
Oh,
Wow.
you should come over here. You'll get a headache at some point. You'll be like, I've only had 2 headaches, but the second one I got never stopped.
You know what? Sit with us for like an hour. We'll get you your second headache.
Name not existed. I love my Primetime Aquatics shirt. Well, thank you.
Woo,
Appreciate
yay.
that. That's cool. Stacy says, oh my goodness. And I thought my husband had a lot of shirts, not 150. Yeah, like I said, there's stacks of them.
I'm organizing it, but it's.
Is there ever going to be a time when they're organized? Like
well, I've
past
tried.
tense?
I've tried.
No, I know
they're
you've
kind
tried.
of-
You keep
They're
trying.
kind of, but it's in a constant, perpetual state of. It's not going to fit
Organization.
there. That's
Yeah.
pretty much.
You're
Yeah.
gonna need a walk-in closet for all your T-shirts. Aaron says, "What fish could you never live without?" Ooh, some type of geophagus for me. That would have to be the number one thing. And we don't actually have that many in the fish room. We've got the wine millerai. Oh boy, I better watch what I say, because is he the only like main geophagus we have at this point? And then I've got a bunch of smaller wine millerai.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have any others?
Yeah,
I've got the
of course you do.
Geophagus dicrososter and the 75.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got a whole colony of those. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I've got those. But that would be the fish that will always have to be in the fish room. You?
Well, I would say the green neon, but it would be neck and neck with the betta. I would probably always, no matter how many tanks I had, I would have to have a betta. And usually like right by my desk.
Yeah,
Like
that's
Peanut.
true.
Peanut is just fabulous.
Yeah. And the shell dwellers for me too. I mean, that's a neck and neck one. Like the Maltese, we have a lot of shell dwellers in the fish room. Well, I don't actually. Do we have a? Yeah, we've got the Maltese, Similis, Brevis. I believe there's still some gold ocellatus in the 125. There might be another one floating around the fish room, but those are the 2 main ones that gotta have them. And there's other ones that they always seem to be in the fish room. I always have to have a regular gourami, like an opaline, a blue, or a gold, and I'd always call him Gary. And I get them, and then they live a really long time in our fish room too. The one that we have now, the opaline, is very, very old, and he's kind of like, hey, how are you? I'm a little bent now, but I'm still eating and I'm still swimming fast. So yeah, gouramis, angelfish, they will always be in the fish room. Corn
Yeah.
cats, bristlenose plecos, because they're workhorse in our fish room. Gotta have those. So yeah, those are some.
Melanie is here. Hey,
So-
Melanie. So she says, my Just Scape It shirt is going to Germany with me on Tuesday.
Wow,
That's amazing.
pretty
You have to get a
cool.
picture of you with your shirt with some German city behind you. Please. My homeland. I'm half German, and I've never been there. My sister's been there like twice.
And you're gonna have to do
It's gonna
that
be
while
so
sitting
much
in
fun.
the Volkswagen.
And can you guess what Melanie's favorite fish is that she couldn't live without? I could.
Oh, it's gouramis. It's got to be smaller gouramis, like
That's right.
chocolates or licorice.
Oh,
or,
you know, why don't I
yeah.
have any licorice gouramis? I want them so bad.
Because the last time we had them, those were the ones that got the crazy ick outbreak. We got them, quarantined them, and they lasted like 3 days. And they were like, hey, we're fine. Hey, we're absolutely covered in ick. Hey, here's some meds. Too late. All gone. So yeah, that's pretty much how
Yeah.
it happened. It was unfortunate. Big shrimping. I have rice fish in a heavily planted tank. I see the females carrying eggs, but I never find eggs in the mops. Any tips? The rice fish, they connect to the body, and then I believe they just wind up hatching. So I would just let them do their thing. At least I don't remember the eggs when we've bred the rice fish. Of course, I don't know if I really paid that close attention, but they were carrying them, and then it seemed like the next day there were little tiny babies. So that's kind of how it went. All right, let me see. I am scrolling. This thing just jumped all over the
Yeah,
place.
I know. It's very weird.
It's very jumpy today.
It's very jumpy.
Zeus says, always listen to your streams. Wanted to ask a question about my stocking in a 90 gallon. 1 electric blue acara, cool. 1 severum, yep. 5 geophagus. I got to squint. 7I wanting one male, 2 females. Any recommendations? All right, so I've kept all these fish together before. The Acara are peaceful. The Severum, maybe if you can, stay away from the greens. They tend to be a little bit more aggressive. And after mentioning that in a video a long time ago, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, the green Severums are more aggressive than the golds and the red shoulders and that kind of thing. 5 Geophagus, I think if you go the 1 male, 2 females, or just a pair, you'll probably wind up fine. So if you're planning on, yeah, I'm going to do 5, then I'll move a couple of them out once I figure out the males and female situation. That could probably work in a 90 gallon. Yeah. Just keep an eye on it. You just never know what the Severums, if they start breeding, the Geophagus, if they start breeding. I've found they're not super aggressive when they're protecting eggs, but yeah, it might work. So
Juan Pablo asks, can you mix swordtails with platies and tetras? Was considering getting a swordtail pair for a community fish tank.
Part of it depends on how big the tank is. I feel better with that situation when the tank size increases to like a 40 gallon. 29, maybe it works. The male swordtails sometimes get a little bit aggressive. So that's the tetras are not going to be a problem for the most part. The swordtails, most of the time, just ignore them. It's just the whole platy swordtail combination. So you just have to keep an eye on the male swordtail and see how he's doing with the other female swords, because you're going to want more than one female sword, because he'll be constantly harassing the female. And then just keep an eye and see how he does with the platies. But when I kept them together, they were bigger tanks. They were usually 4-foot tanks. And he chased the platies around from time to time, but nothing major. It wasn't like they were all fin-nipped and scared and hiding in a corner. It was just sometimes he'd be like, go away from me. And he'd chase them a little bit, and then he'd leave them alone.
Ready for another one?
Yeah.
All right. From Jaminade, why does it keep coming back on my fish? I treat it every time, but when I do water changes, it comes back.
Okay, so a couple things there. I did a big, very extensive ick video. A couple things to consider. One, when I treat ick, I do a combination, when possible, of 3 things. I use usually something like Ick X. If it's a really bad ick infestation and I don't have invertebrates or plants in the tank, sometimes I'll switch to Copper Safe. Especially with African cichlids, I'll do that quite frequently because they can take those heavier meds and the Copper Safe knocks it out pretty aggressively. So let's just say Ick X is a safe med that's fairly effective. I'm also increasing temperatures. Usually I'm getting into the 82, 83, 84 range. Again, I'm not doing this with goldfish or cool water fish, but for most tropical fish, I'm testing their upper limits. What that's doing is it's speeding up the ick life cycle. It seems like something you wouldn't want to happen, but when you've got the meds in there, it provides the meds an opportunity to interact with the ick parasite when it's in its motile form, which is when it's susceptible to the meds. It's not susceptible to the meds when it's in the substrate or when it's actually connected to the fish itself. And then salt. If you've got a non-planted tank and you've got fish that can handle salt, so you don't have a bunch of clown loaches or cory cats or soft water fish, I will, depending on the fish, I'll go anywhere from 1 tablespoon per 10 gallons. If it's like an African cichlid tank and I know they can take it, or even like the large South Central American cichlids, they're getting a tablespoon per like 3 gallons. All of that is happening. I keep the meds, the salt, and the temperatures for at least 10 to 14 days after I see the last spot. So I am making very, very sure that this stuff is not coming back. So a lot of the big mistake that a lot of people make is they treat the tank, the ick is gone. The minute they see the ick gone, they stop treating it. They lower the temperatures, they do water changes to get the salt out, they do water changes to get the meds out, but the ick's not completely gone because, especially if you haven't sped up the life cycle, it is going to be in the substrate, or it could be connected to your gravel vac. It could be on if your gravel vac is, especially if it stays, there's still water inside the tubes, or there's water inside the gravel vac. Now, if the ick dries out, it's going to die. All right? One of the best things you can do when you're treating disease with your equipment is let the stuff thoroughly dry. If you can let it dry in the sun, that's even better. So like nets, gravel vacs, algae scrapers, all that stuff. But the key is making sure that you continue treatment as if you're just treating the tank with the meds, the salt if possible, the temps if possible, for at least 10 to 14 days after you see the last spot. At that point, I've never had it come back after that. Okay. What's up?
That's it.
You got something you want to say?
No, I was going to let you have a turn.
You're going to let me have a turn, huh?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's really nice of you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, since I've got a turn, I feel really special. Nadina, thank you so much for becoming a prime timer, and same thing with Charlie. Thank you. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us, being part of the group. That's awesome. Thank you. James says, question, do you test for copper levels when you treat with CopperSafe? Do you use half or for a new species with no dosage data? So, no, I don't test for copper. I am just going to, when I use CopperSafe, I really try to make sure the fish that are in the tank are going to be somewhat resistant to the copper treatment, right? So like I said, I'm not really doing that. Cory cats don't really like the copper. Loaches don't really like the copper. I can't have invertebrates, so no shrimp, no snails, no plants. It is a little bit rougher on the beneficial bacteria as well, but I just let it roll. I mean, that's just me. I put in a full dose, in it goes. The nice thing about the CopperSafe compared to, like, let's say an ICX, is once you put the CopperSafe in, you don't have to keep adding more unless you do a water change for some reason in between. Maybe your nitrates are getting high, or you're in the middle of also fighting. A lot of people are also fighting ammonia spikes. So then you add CopperSafe based on the amount of water you've changed, but you just add it once and let it do its thing. But I don't change it because half dose is probably not going to get you what you need. If you're worried about copper, I would just switch and go to ICX. But if you are going to use a CopperSafe, you go full on. I roll with the recommended dosage. And there's been times where I've actually done a little bit more with like some of my cichlids, and they've handled it okay. Not a lot more, just a little bit. Yeah.
All right, stocking question. We're getting a lot of stocking questions.
Cool.
These are fun. It's like a puzzle. All right.
Puzzle.
Jared asks, I have a 40-gallon breeder. Can I keep, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
2 angelfish.
Okay.
4 pineapple swordtails.
Okay.
6 turquoise rainbow fish. Pretty.
Mm-hmm.
6 cories. 6 coolies. If not, please help me because I'm deciding by this weekend.
Yeah, so stocking levels on the 40 breeder, that seems reasonable. The one thing with the swordtails is I would probably go with 1 male, 3 females, because again, the males are going to harass the females. So it's better that the males have multiple females and some of the females get a break from the males being like, hey, you want to make babies? Hey, let's make babies. And they're all like, oh my gosh, this guy again. The 2 angelfish, you're going to have to be a little bit careful there, because if you wind up with 2 males, sometimes they're going to be like, you know what? I want this side of the tank, or okay, I'm taking this side. And there might be a little bit of sparring every once in a while. You have to keep an eye on it. When they're small, usually no problems. So I'm talking about when they're full grown, like the body's the size of the palm of your hand sort of thing. They might look, at full grown, the angelfish might look a little cramped, especially if you do veil tails. Veil tails I would never put in a 40 breeder. I've had veil tail angels that were at least 12 inches from the tip of their top fin to the bottom. Those veil tails were huge. So I would not do veil tails in a 40. I would just do standard fin, and you got to kind of keep an eye on them. If you've got a pair, they might want to breed, and so that could cause a little bit of battle when it comes to territory, but they're usually not horrible. The rainbow fish, in a 40 breeder, it's probably about as small as I would go, because the full-size rainbows, when you're looking at a pretty close to a 4-inch rainbow fish, they're pretty active. So just kind of keep that in mind. I think a better option with the rainbows on a 40 breeder might be, and you could do more, would be like a dwarf rainbow, or you got the Selby's rainbows, the Fakata rainbow. Those might be pretty cool. They're not technically like rainbow fish like what you're talking about, but the rainbow fish that you've chosen are okay. But when they get full grown, given their activity level, they might look like they could use some more space.
Just, this is like 18 inches. So
it was like,
this angelfish was like the size.
This angelfish was like this big.
Amazing.
This big. And it swam around on its side. But seriously, when I I had the veil tail in the 4-foot 150. It's a 30-inch tall tank, and I moved that angel in with other angels that were in the 125. Now, 125 is a decent sized tank, but it's not nearly as tall as the 150. And I was like, ooh, this thing's only got a couple inches from, or a few inches from like the top and the bottom of the tank. When it's swimming around, it looked a little silly. I thought about moving it back, but it was just, at that time, there was too much action going on at 150. I had tinfoil barbs in there and a ballast shark, and they're all bouncing around. I got to get this angelfish out of here. So that's what I done did.
I'd like to retract my statement because you're actually using this for every single number that you throw out.
Yeah, it could be like, this thing was like 3 inches, man.
This is also the height of a 150. So never mind.
Because
you're
I
just
only have
using
so much space.
True.
I can only, so hold on.
Yeah, I calculated that in my head.
I can only go to here.
Right.
You know, the 150 was
I get that.
Huge.
That's why I retracted my comment.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You know what? You're welcome.
Thank you so much for the super chat. Hey, Professor, long-time listener, first-time commenter. Of course you are. I just want to say you and Joanna are my favorite people streaming on this channel. 47 did
Thank
win.
you.
Did I win? Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm kind of fond of her streaming on the channel, I suppose.
Thank you.
So we've got 2 boys, and I told my youngest, or I told my oldest the other day, I'm like, you know what? You are definitely one of my top 3 favorite kids. He thought that was pretty funny.
That is funny.
We have 2 kids. Told him he was in my top 2. Yeah.
That's
Ben
funny.
says 110 tall. Oh wait, hold on. There's another one. What about a mixed hat peacock tank and a 110 tall? Those are. It's possible. I mean, I've done it in 75 without too many issues. I had OBs and Red Empress and Dragon Bloods and Eureka Reds and what else was in there? Sunshine Peacocks. I had it in a 75, and that's the same footprint as your 110. They'll use some of that height because they're crazy. They're always going up and down and all around. But you're still going to have some battles. You have to be a little bit careful with that setup, just because the 110 tall, like I said, it's a 4-foot tank. It's got the same footprint as the 75 or the 90. It's always better to have at least a 6-foot tank, but it works. It can work. Stay away from the really aggressive peacocks if you can.
Alex is in the house. Secret Life.
What's up, man? What's up?
There was something I was like, oh, I hope he goes to the chat. I think this might have been last week. I had a question that I wanted to ask you, and now I don't know what it was.
Well,
dang
we
it.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I
We
know.
appreciate your concern. Hold on, I saw something. Oh, KJ, how do you get the best hatch rate for baby brine shrimp? So what I do, and I did a video on this. It's an old video. The lighting is horrible. The audio is marginal. And just the video quality is a solid 5 out of 10. But the information is quite good. So if you go back through Primetime Aquatics, especially if you're on desktop, you hit the little magnifying glass. You just type in live baby brine shrimp or baby brine shrimp. A video is going to come up where I use a 1-liter bottle. So I basically take a couple 1-liter bottles. I cut the bottom off of one, about just the bottom, and then I turn around. I'm actually able to use that as a top. And then I take another 1-liter bottle. I cut about this much of the bottom off, put some rocks in there, shove them together. Fill that thing up. It's 2 scoops. 2 scoops of Raisin Bran. I think it's 2 tablespoons of salt is what that scooper is. I don't even remember anymore. I'm pretty sure it's 2 tablespoons with a teaspoon of live baby brine, or about a half a teaspoon or so maybe. And I just stick it in our fish room, bubble it up, and 24 hours later, it's ready to go. So if you don't have a room that's kicking at 80 or 82 degrees like our fish room is, some people will put a light. So 2 things happen with the light. The light will keep that brine shrimp hatchery warmer. And 2, the brine shrimp will sometimes hatch better with light present. The other thing is you're going to want some kind of an air hose in there just to kind of keep it circulating, keep it bubbling. But the thing is, with live baby brine, if you do all those things and you're hitting that around 80, 82 degrees in the temperature, usually somewhere around 24 hours is when you're going to want to basically remove the live baby brine and feed it out. If you go longer than that, they use too much of their nutrients, and then the fish wind up just eating mostly moving exoskeleton, which is marginal. Less than that, and a lot of the live baby brine might not have hatched. So if you're trying like 12 hours or 14 hours, it might not hatch in time. So that's how we do it. We've been doing that twice a day, every day, for many, 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 many years. So we hatch live baby brine in the morning and at night, and all the little fish in our fish room, whether or not it's fry or not, they get it because they love it. So a lot of people ask, with the fish that we have, what we like, well, the ones that we're bringing to the swap this weekend, like all the rasboras, the chilies, the galaxies, the green kubatai, even our peacock gudgeons. I've been feeding it to our red line rasboras. They get live baby brine, so they're eating good. Before you get those fish twice a day, they're getting their little North Fin flake food, but they're also getting the live baby brine. They go crazy for it. So, and that's in addition to all of our fry, like all our shell dweller fry, our tiger limia, caudal punks. We've got Julidochromis transcriptus babies, and they're getting it too. So twice a day. It's my secret.
Alex has a question for you.
Uh-oh.
I have 8, I believe it says 8, Synodontis petricola catfish. I was curious if they can spawn without a cichlid to pair with.
I have never spawned them. Yeah, because those are crazy fish. Some of those Synodontis will actually use cichlids, and the cichlids will actually keep the Synodontis eggs in their mouth.
Really?
So
I had no idea.
Alex, honestly, I don't know, because I don't know not all Synodontis, I don't think all Synodontis rely on cichlids for the hatching of their eggs, and I don't know if the petricola do or not, but if they are a fish that requires another mouth-burning cichlid, then two things you could do. One, obviously, yeah, you could use the cichlids for that, but two, then you could also just, when you see the eggs, you could potentially just tunnel them. So that's the other way to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
If they're not eating them.
Well, yeah, sure, I'll watch them for you.
Yeah.
Hand them over.
Yep. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Jaden says, why do my Endler guppies keep dying even though the diet is perfect and the water parameters are perfect? If you're getting them from a big box store, I have found that sometimes guppies, Endlers in general, are not the most resilient. And even with some of the local pet stores, if they're getting them from the same place that the big box stores get their guppies and Endlers, sometimes there can be problems. For the longest time, it was very depressing. I would get guppies from like a Petco, PetSmart, and the guppies would never survive. I'd put them in a tank. They looked like they were fine. They were active. They were doing their thing. And within 2 to 3 weeks, they would all be dead. And I kept trying and I kept failing. I'm like, I don't know what my problem is. I know my water parameters are good for guppies, hard water, decent pH, higher pH. And then I stumbled upon guppies from people who are breeding them at the Chicago Live Bearer Society, people who are bringing them in at the Greenwater Aquarium Society, and especially Twin Cities guppies. And those things were bulletproof, man. You'd put them in a tank and they would just do their thing. And we had big, giant groups of guppy party tanks where they were breeding like crazy. So the moral of the story is it might not be you. It might just be the source. And if you can change the source and get them from a reputable breeder or get them from a place like Twin Cities Guppies and bring them in, it might cost you a little bit of money, right? It's going to cost you a little bit more. It might cost you some money to ship. But the cool thing is once you've got your, a couple males and 3, 4, 5, well, probably if you got a couple males, probably 5 or 6 females, they start breeding for you. You get a really cool strain. It's worth it. Long term, it's worth it.
Lucas says that his Heteronia formosa are struggling. I've lost a bunch. They show enlarged, cloudy eyes one day, then they drop dead the next.
Ooh.
Parameters are stable. Did water changes? Suggestion for treatment for the little dudes? I'm sorry, Lucas.
Yeah, that stinks. Cloudy eyes are usually indicative of something going on with the water, some type of infection. With the cloudy eyes, for us, there's 3 meds that are typically a go-to for me. I usually start out with the Maricin Oxy. I like that med, and it's one of those meds you add every day. It kind of breaks down in the water, so it's a daily addition. I think it's mostly daily. I don't remember exactly what the directions are, but yeah, that I like. If that's not working, then I'll switch to the Maricin 1 or 2, and usually by the time I get done with that, that issue is mostly gone. Yeah. Let me see. Bob, thank you so much for the super chat that just jumped around on me. I have 7.6 pH, 300 parts per million. Oh, wait, hold on. That's Mike. Hold on, Mike. I'll get to yours in a second. It jumped on me. Bob, here's your question. Sorry. Can one male betta be in a community tank with other fish species? Can snail and shrimp get diseases that fish get, ick, parasites, mycobacterium, etc.? No, not really. The snails and shrimp, generally speaking, don't get the same types of diseases that fish get. So that's not usually a concern that I have. Can a betta be in a community tank?
Yes.
Yeah, we do that a lot. So we've had a number of bettas in community tanks. You know, you'll hear people say, "Oh, you can't keep anything bigger than a 20." Well, then I don't know how my bettas always survive in 75-gallon tanks. I had them in a 150 one time. So yes, you can keep them, provided you just got to be careful, right? You have to be careful in the larger, like let's say it's a 20-gallon, 29-gallon. You just want to make sure that your filter flow is appropriate. It's not too strong. It's not blowing the betta around. You want to make sure that whatever fish are in there are not going to fin nip your betta. So we stay away from a lot of the tiger barb type fish or the Colombian tetras or the Buenos Aires tetra. These fish that you know are going to be like, hey, those are long fins. Bet they're tasty. And next thing you know, that long fin betta is like, wow, you gave that betta one heck of a haircut. Thanks a lot for that. So tank mates, we've done videos on betta tank mates before. That'll give you some ideas. And in that video, we assumed that people were keeping a betta in anywhere from like a 5 to a 20 gallon, maybe even a 29. So we went over tank mates for bettas in each one of those tanks. All right.
That was a great question.
That was a great question. Mike, thank you for the super chat. I have a pH of 7.6, 300 ppm on the GH, and 0 kH. How do I increase pH and GH? Increase pH and GH without increasing, I think it's supposed to be pH and KH, without increasing GH. Looking to start it in Buna tank. Go with the Carib Sea cichlid mix, the African cichlid mix. Use that as your substrate, and that would certainly help buffer that pH. It'll raise the KH. That's definitely what I would do. Like I said in one of the earlier questions, the Fritz African cichlid buffer salt will also be helpful with that. But see where you're at just using the Carib Sea African cichlid mix, because that will definitely buffer. It will buffer your water pretty decently. So try that, and then if you have to go from there and mess with it, then yeah, you can. Ragonite, yeah, it would be another one Ray said, so for sure. So yeah, that's what I would do. Thank you.
Dalton wants to know, what substrate do you think looks best with Cereu rock and a black background? And how much should I get for 75 gallon? What substrate would you pick?
I would pick black sand. That would be, especially with a black background.
You
That's
could,
just me,
or
but I've seen
I
it
would
look good with a
go
lot of different ways.
opposite. I would go white, and my favorite white sand is Moonlight Sand, Carib Sea. Those two, yeah, can't go wrong. They would look really great. Although the if you're using Cereu, another option, it's not as, you can't find it everywhere. It's the one that I use for the Awaza tank, Onyx Sand. I found it on sevenports.com, and it's like a blue grayish black, and it's kind of a variety of little morsels. I really like it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to throw that one out there. But for 75 gallon tank, you're going to need about probably, depending how you're going to do your scape, 70 to 100 pounds.
Yeah.
If you're going to be sloping it, you'll need more, but usually it's a pound per gallon.
Her 209 says multipunctatus need a cichlid. Thank you for adding that information. I saw someone here, somebody asked a question. Now I don't remember where it went because the thing skipped around me, about geophagus and the substrate color that I would choose. With every geophagus I've ever had, I much, much, much prefer a black. As dark as I can go, black is the best substrate with the geophagus. It really shows that spangling off, whether it's the Tapajos, the Brazilians. I mean, literally every single geophagus I've had, I've tried on dark substrate, and some of them I've had on lighter, like the Geophagus Weimilleri that I have, or Altifrons, sorry, the Geophagus Altifrons that I have right now in the 150. We made a mistake with that. We really should have used black sand in that tank for that fish, because it would have much better color. It had better color, believe it or not, when that fish was on blue and black gravel. And we switched to brown, and it lightened it up. And I'm really disappointed, because that fish at that size would look insane if we had gone with the black sand instead. So that was a big mistake. I am not going to be ripping that tank apart, changing the substrate again, because that was such a pain in the you know what.
Yeah.
But dark every geophagus I've ever seen looks better, because what happens when you put them on light substrate sometimes is they just kind of wash out a little bit. They still look good, don't get me wrong. I've seen plenty of videos, I've seen geophagus where they look good on the lighter substrate, but they just don't get that very deep, rich spangling that you see on the black. And then you also have a green severum and a couple of angels. Now the problem is going to be with the green severum, when you put that on a dark substrate, it's going to really muddy up. It's going to basically turn a blackish brown, and you're not going to see that green anymore. The green severums especially I like on a light substrate. To me that looks better. But then all the other severums I prefer on darker, like the red spot golds, the red shoulders. Red shoulders can look good either way, I think. What you got?
Joe Jonas says, all of a sudden, my whole tank has decided not to eat very much at all. Cichlids. Any ideas?
Oh, that's unusual, right? Because usually cichlids attack the food.
Yeah.
Ideas? Did you add anything new? Anything? Any new fish? Any new
Plants.
driftwood, plants, rocks? Anything that could have introduced some type of internal parasite? Are they looking lethargic? Are they starting to swim slowly? Are they bloating out at all? I'm assuming you didn't change the food, because that would have been something right away where you're like, okay, maybe that's the food. Is the food getting older? Did you feed the fish something that they really loved? Then you went back to the normal food, and it's like, hey man, you remember that stuff that you fed us? We're not eating this other old stuff anymore. If it's none of that, I guess keep an eye on them and maybe so the one. Is it African cichlids or just cichlids? If they're South Central American, then you could go try feeding bloodworms, right? Because my go-to is if fish are not eating. And every fish I've ever had that, I don't do this with my Mbuna cichlids, but if they're South Central American, or even sometimes like the peacocks and stuff, if they're not eating, like, all right, I'm going to chuck some bloodworms in there. Are they eating them, or are they spitting those out? Because if they're spitting those out, then maybe there's something going on internally that you might have to start treating.
This is a fascinating question.
Okay.
This is like a aquarium. I don't know, whatever. I can't think of what I'm trying to say. Anyways, this is from Nanners. If I wanted to set up a truly colorless monochromatic tank, fish, substrate, core, and everything, what fish would you recommend? I know how I would do.
Well, it depends on whether or not you want to see them.
Right. Exactly. You could do clear, so like the X-ray tetra, or the what are they? The ones that we
Glass
have?
cats.
Thank you, glass cat.
Or would you just do like all white?
You could, but if
White
if
on
it's
white on white.
But if it's monochromatic, you can't really have a whole lot of white plants. So if you're saying monochromatic, you could say
plants, bro.
Well, you could do all plants, like green. So you could do green substrate. That would be. I'm sure you can. You can get it.
Don't do it. Please don't do it. Don't do all
Let's
green.
see. Oh boy, what would you do? Let's see.
You could go all white or all black. Black would be the easiest thing to do, because you do black substrate, black background.
Black rock.
Probably either the black rock or even the Seiryu is going to be gray, and then you could do black angels. There's so many blackfish. You got black koi cats. They're a little bit not common, but they're there. There's the black sharks.
You could do that, like the black onyx sand with the Seiryu stone. So you got those two matching.
Yeah.
What
then
fish?
you go silver. Then you could do silver fish. Then you could do like a bunch of Lake Tanganyikans. You could do like brevis shell dwellers, or you could do some of the feather fins are silver, mostly silver, or like a bluish silver. So you could definitely do silver. And then you've got like silver dollars. You've got depending on the size of the tank. You got tinfoil barbs if you had a really big tank. What else? There's tons of silverfish, tons, a whole mess load.
I think it was the aquascaping rhino just posted a picture today of, wasn't it? There was a picture of
I don't know.
I think that was him.
Such things, man.
But it was the coolest picture of a glass cat. And it was just a black and white picture. It was
Yeah.
really cool.
That's
it was super
cool.
cool. And that's what made me think of the monochromatic. So black and white.
Marshmallow Man, thank you so much for the super chat. I just added 7 neon tetras. They have been hiding under a decoration I have, and they don't seem to come out often. How do I make sure they get food? If they're healthy, they're going to come out and eat at some point. It's very common for neon tetras, some of the smaller tetras, to just be a little skittish. Your green neons were that way for a while, where they're hiding. Let them just do their thing. Let them feel comfortable. Let them hide. Again, as long as they're healthy, they're going to start coming out very slowly when they learn, hey, you know what, I peek my head out, I grab a little bit of food, right? When they see you, they might start to learn, okay, when that big blob comes out in front of the tank, there's going to be some food out there, and they'll start picking at it. It might be one of those things where, I have found with the neons, sometimes they just like to chill out and be something. A lot of times we think of the neons are just going to swim back and forth. They're going to be my schooling fish. And other times you'll get a group like this, and it takes them a long time before they're comfortable enough to come out. So when they get hungry, trust me, their hunger drive will overcome their fear, because they're like, I'm getting woozy here. I think my blood sugar's getting low. Jordan, thank you so much for the super chat. I have a community tank, and I've just added a half moon. He was hiding all day. Now he's swimming around, eating. Is this normal behavior? Yeah. Just like those neons we're talking about. Fish, when you add fish to an aquarium, it might take them a while sometimes to feel comfortable, and a while can mean days. So yeah, sometimes it's just one of those things where they don't know what's going on. They're in a new place. They're trying to figure things out. They go to an area where they think it's comfortable, and then they will come out when they're ready to eat. And yeah.
Miguel asks, how many programi could I have in an 80-gallon tank? Keeping in mind, I want a community.
In an 80? Oh, so I'll tell you right now, I have 14 in a 55-gallon. And I mean, you can look at that tank when I did the species profile on the programi. I don't think it looks crowded or anything. They don't move fast. And so a lot of people, when they think about stocking levels and the size of the tank that they should have for certain fish, sometimes they're just looking at the size of the fish exclusively, and that's not necessarily the right way to look at it, because yes, the size is important, but also the activity level is important. I'll give you an extreme example. The Chaka Chaka cat, Chuck. Chuck right now is about 6 inches. He's in a 10-gallon. Chuck, literally, I've never seen that fish actually swim. He doesn't. He just lays there. He's an ambush predator, and he just lays there. Now, he does move around, because I'll see him in different parts of the tank from time to time, but even at night, he's not an active fish. And then what he does is when he eats, he props himself up on the side of the tank, and he stays like that for a day or two until he gets proper digestion. So a lot of people say you cannot keep a 6-inch fish in a 10-gallon tank, and most of the time I would absolutely positively agree with that, but Chuck doesn't move. So it really doesn't matter. Chuck's not like, oh man, really cramped for space, where if you kept a 6-inch peacock cichlid in there, that would be horrible, because that fish would be like, dude, I'm cramped in here. So back to my point with the programi, they're not really super active fish. They tend to chill out. When you put them in a group, they tolerate one another very well. So I've got, if you really want to do something cool, I've got the standard programi, but then I also have the gold programi in there as well. I've got 2 or 3 of those mixed in. It's very striking. So in an 80-gallon, you could do a dozen, easily do a dozen, and it would be a very striking thing. Really cool. And what's nice about the programi, it's one of the few where you can put them in a group. The programi and the honey gourami are 2 of the gouramis that's like, yeah, I can put these in a group and they're going to get along for the most part. We try that with the dwarfs, you try that with the standard opalines, golds, and blues, you're going to have some problems usually. Kyle, thank you so much for the super chat. Starting my first 75-gallon planted tank. That's going to be cool. Yeah. Going to be small fish aquarium. Any advice for a first planted tank owner setup? What advices?
Well, in regards to fish or plants?
Well, you start with the plants and I'll pipe in with the fish. How about that? How about that?
All right, so like 75-gallon tank. Well, if you've got decent size driftwood, there's always Anubias. that you can kind of attach Java ferns to take up a lot of room. I really like Vallisneria. Get a lot of bang for your buck with that one. Boy, I'm not as good as
Crypts.
Crypts,
Yeah,
yeah.
most of the crypts
with
are
the bigger
really
tanks.
nice.
What about swords? Then
Some of these swords get even too big for a 75. I had
really?
a sword that I started out in a 29, got too big for that, moved to the 75. It literally filled up like almost a third of that 75 gallon. But I mean, the swords
That's
are
true.
cool.
It was a
they
beast.
can work, but they will get very, very large. But yeah, I agree with you. The jungle val, especially along the back. Anubias, some of the Anubias get very big. I think a lot of people are used to seeing Anubias Nana Petite or Anubias Nana, and they're like, oh, here's a medium-sized plant, but we've got some Anubias that is way outgrown some 20-gallon tanks. I mean, it's popping out of the top. It's knocking the lids off at this point, and it would be much better suited for a 75 because these things the Anubias are about this tall. You'll
just have to wait a little while to get the full effect.
But start with those. And fish-wise, if you're going to do small, it's a great idea because with the 75, you can do some striking things. You know, if it were me, you know, I might do 25 Galaxy Rasboras and chuck in 30 or so Chili Rasboras and maybe, 8 or 10 Cory Cats at the bottom. Depending on what plants you choose, maybe a half a dozen clown plecos to kind of take care of algae. You could potentially do some hatchet fish, the marble hatchets at the top. You could do 6, 8, 10 of those. But yeah, there's some sweet options there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think in a 75 heavily planted tank, you wouldn't see them very often potentially. But if you did peacock gudgeons in a tank like that, with
peeking out, that would be kind of fun.
It'd be one of those things where it'd be special. You throw in a half a dozen, 6 or 8 of them.
I saw
and
them.
every once in a while, you just see them kind of just peeking around the corner with that amazing color. It'd be cool. It'd be really cool.
For sure. So James says that he'd like to see me do a scape from the beach in Hawaii that has the green sand beaches. Papakalea, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be you never know. It's quite a possibility, James.
Wait, Whip's got a question. He said, the black marbled stone I acquired from you through the one and only Dave from Iowa. What is that stuff called? Is that the Seiryu that you got?
You got Seiryu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, man.
A lot of it has that white veining through it, which is really, really cool.
Yep. Brittany says, I wanted to get an electric blue car. Can I get just one? My tank has tiger barbs, platies, Buenos Aires Tetras. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, provided that you've got at least a 40-gallon. That's usually kind of my threshold, my minimum for an electric blue car, 40 gallons, so that's a 3-foot tank. If you got a 4-foot, even better, but you should get along just fine with the fish you've got in there. And yes, you can do one. For sure.
Yeah, and Amanda says the crinum, calamustratum.
Oh,
that's also a really good one too. Yeah, my brain doesn't really work for large plants, so when you say large planted aquarium, it's kind of like. But yeah, even I know Bacopa will take a long time, but that would be a really good tall plant.
Yeah, I mean some crypts get tall too. I mean, I've got crypts in a standard 20 that again are poking out of the top. So 20 gallons not a short. A standard 20 isn't exactly a short tank.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be cool. Peeve says, are ember tetras okay to put in a tank with shrimp? I also have harlequins, rummy-nose, cardinals in that tank. So if you've already got the shrimp in there, the embers aren't going to get as big as the fish that you've got in there now. So they're going to be the smallest of all of those fish. If you're thinking about adding the shrimp to that mix, most of them would probably leave the adults alone. They would definitely eat the shrimplets. But like I said, if you've got them in there already and you're just wondering if you can add the embers in there with everything else, yeah, for sure. It's going to be the smallest of that group. What you got? You got something?
No.
Julia, thank you so much for becoming a prime-timer, primate, prime-time partner. Glad you're here. Oink says, Chuck, the chaka-chaka, is a fish I wish I could hug. Looks a little grumpy, but he's adorable. Yeah, I really love Chuck. I don't remember who I was talking to the other day about. Oh, your sister. She doesn't like Chuck.
No, she's mad at Chuck.
The story with Chuck is, technically Chuck is not my fish, it's Luke's fish. And Luke found Chuck and called me and said, Dad, there's this fish that I'm going to bring home. It's a catfish. It looks really cool, and it doesn't get super big. And so I was like, okay, whatever, bring it home. Well, then he brings this thing home, like, what is this? He's like, it's a chaka cat. And we did the exact thing that I tell you not to do. Don't just bring home a fish. Now, we have, obviously, it's a little bit easier for us when you've got 80 fish tanks and you've got all these different environments set up. We can almost always find, within reason, a place for fish, unless it's a bigger, giant South Central American cichlid, then I know better than to bring those home. So we get Chuck home and find out that Chuck pretty much only eats live fish. That's just Chuck's thing. Now, luckily, in a fish room our size, we're always breeding fish, and sometimes some of those fish are not capable of surviving very long because we have to do some culling. So that's what happens. That's Chuck's food. Well, your sister doesn't like the fact that Chuck has to consume live fish, and I don't. That's not a thing. Yeah. I've never. I mean, if you look at our channel, it's not something that I do. It's just not part of what we are. But we've grown very attached to Chuck, and yeah, he just sits there. There have been, so the fun fact behind the scenes, when I did the last fish room tour, Chuck was behind the sponge filter. And I'm like, well, Chuck, I can't film you back there, dude. So I just took my finger and I scooched Chuck, and he just kind of looked at me like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm moving you to the front of the tank.
It's time for
your
picture.
And then he sat there because he wasn't going to swim. I had to move him to the front, and then I filmed him, and then 2 days later he was back by the sponge filter, but he stayed at the front for a while. So, yeah. And the chaka cats are interesting because they also emit a poison that kind of temporarily paralyzes fish so that they can eat them. So it's very strange fish.
Yeah, he's a strange dude.
Yeah, and yes, he's ugly, but ugly cute in a way. Yeah.
Mr. Alistair 28. Can you speak on the betta shortage going on right now?
I wasn't. So that's interesting.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know. Yeah, I wasn't aware that there was a betta shortage happening. So you've just brought some new news to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on there. I don't know if anybody else has any news about that.
Anybody have any info on that?
I wasn't aware that there was a betta shortage. Pablo, thank you so much for the super chat. Would discus be okay in Cook County water? I've heard that some of the imported tank-bred discus are more resistant to higher pH. How many for 72-gallon bow front? Okay, so here would be my recommendation. If you're in Cook County, so you've got Lake Michigan water, same as us. There are the one place you would want to check out that I'm aware of is Chicago Discus. I think that's what it's called, right? Chicago Discus. She's been doing discus and keeping them in Chicago water for, I think it's been decades. I don't know. It's been a long time, and that's generally where a lot of people get their discus from, like in our clubs. The other thing that you could consider is going to the GCCA swap, if not this Sunday, the one that's coming up in December, and talking with the people who bring discus to the swaps, because they've probably had them in Chicago water for a pretty long time. Now, you're not going to be able to breed them in our water, so forget, if you're trying to breed, water's way too hard, the pH is too high, but I'm fairly certain that I know Chicago Discus keeps the discus in Chicago water, and a lot of the people that bring them to the swaps, I believe they do as well. As far as a 72-gallon bow front, I think that's decent for a small to medium-sized discus. I think long-term, you'd probably want to move them out to a taller, larger tank, because full-grown discus are truly a sight to behold. When we did the species profile of the discus, and I filmed that 3,000-gallon tank at the Wonders of Wildlife, because that tank was so large and because they have such good protocol, the discus were, you ready? They were this big. No, they were pretty big. I mean, probably height-wise, 10 inches at least, if not larger. I mean, I'm having a hard time remembering, but that would probably start to look cramped in a 72 bow front. But I mean, if you started them out there and had a group. Now, I don't keep discus. I haven't had discus since I was in my late teens, early 20s, so I am definitely not a person who will tell you exactly how many to keep, but I do know a 72 long term would probably be pretty cramped for them. Let's see here. Whip says Chukka Chukka are freaky looking. Now I must have one. I know, right?
You can have him. Oh.
No, you cannot. Chuck's not going anywhere.
Bye, Chuck. Come on, Chuck.
Nope.
We're going to go for a real ride in the car.
Yeah, Chuck would just be like,
Go to Uncle Whip.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here, man. Just trying to just relax. Yeah.
Alex says, I think the betta shortage is only inexpensive ones, and it's just Segrist and Petco PetSmart intro bettas because of typhoon season, stalling stuff, plus expensive shipping rates.
Yeah.
That would make sense,
and that's,
for sure.
Yeah, the cost of shipping stuff is really impacting the hobby, and it's impacting fish too, because a lot of the fish, the common tropical fish that you get, they're coming from overseas. So it's costing more money to ship those fish from an overseas farm to a wholesaler to you. So all of the cost of energy in general, so the cost to run the wholesale facilities, to heat them, to keep the pumps running and all that stuff. So it's the energy cost that's generally driving everything up in price.
Wayne's Aquatics asks if I'm aware of the top fin black sand shortage. Certainly hope not.
Well, that would be devastating. Well, it's not like we're setting up a bunch of tanks, right?
I just need to know it's available when and if I need any more.
It's just a comfort thing.
It is.
Andy said GCCA will have hundreds of bettas stop on by. That is true, Andy. Yeah, Prism Bettas will be there. I think she's going to be there. I don't know. I shouldn't say that she's going to be there, but she's usually there. But if Prism is there, it should be on the GCCA website, because they had a list of the vendors. And she's got some pretty good ones. So if you're in the area, you can stop by there. All right, let me see. I just saw some stuff. Megan says, I have a pair of brevis in the corner of my 20 long multi-tank. For some reason, I've never seen fry from the pair, and I've had them for a long time. Do they eat their own fry? If not them, sometimes maybe the multis will. So whenever you're mixing shell dwellers, yeah, that can happen. And the brevis, yeah, they're not super great parents like the multis are, where they're going to just let countless numbers of fry survive. They kind of act more, in my experience, they act more like the gold ocellatus, where they're marginal parents. But if you want really good parents for shell dwellers, the multis and the simless are the two best parents.
Oink says that Chuck is such a huggable dude.
I agree. Yeah, except for that poison stuff. I mean, you almost want to give him a kiss on the forehead, and you're like, man, what's going on with my lips? Are
Get him
numb or something?
Little pajamas.
Yeah. All of a sudden, I've got like flashbacks of Beavis and Butthead kissing the frog or whatever.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine.
Shock and be like, what happened? Something's wrong with my face.
Oh
Matthew,
boy.
what does it mean when my fish are swimming up to the surface? Well, it depends on the type of fish. So if they are just fish that are normally just swimming all around the tank, and they're at the surface and staying there and they're gulping, there's some kind of oxygen deficiency. That could be for a lot of reasons. It could be ammonia or nitrite is high. There could be some type of a gill issue. It could be the beginning of ick. It could be poor water flow. So that's usually what it means. Now, if it's just like, oh, I've got a cory cat, and every once in a while he shoots up the top, gulps some air, and comes back down, that can be somewhat normal as long as he's not doing it a lot, because then that can also indicate some type of a disease. I actually look out for that in a community tank when I've got cory cats. One of the things that will happen with ick, there are fish that will show the signs first. In my experience, gouramis, when there's ick in the tank, often they're going to be one of the first ones, not to show the spots, but what you're going to see them do, right down to the bottom, and they'll just sit there at the bottom of the tank and not move around much. It's just every standard gourami I've ever had, when ick has entered the tank, that's exactly what they do. Cory cats, they might not be showing spots, but they'll start shooting to the top, getting lots of air. You'll see their gills going a lot faster. Tinfoil barbs and ballast sharks, if you've got larger tanks, they tend to get impacted pretty early on, and they start getting very agitated, and you can just see it in their swimming, and they start flashing a lot more than other fish, even a day or two before the spots are shown. So I look, when I have those types of fish, they can often tell you. Some fish will tell you when something is wrong earlier than others.
Zen Ginger's here. Hey.
What's up? What's up, Zen? What's up? Glad you're here. Hanging, chilling. chilling with everybody. Wow, the people. Abby's rams, dwarfs, or shell dwellers for breeding. That depends on your water parameters. So rams, if your water is a lower pH and is softer, because if it's not, they're not going to breed for you most likely. The Bolivians might, but the standard German blues and the electric blues and the yellows, if your pH is much above a 7 and your water hardness is starting to climb into the upper single digits on your GH and KH, they're probably not going to breed all that easily. You're also going to want to, with the German blue rams, raise the temperature up a bit. Dwarfs, if we're talking about like things like a pistos, same thing. Ideally for breeding, a 7. Some of the wild caughts you got to go below 7, but the pistos are. I've bred them at a pH of 8, like the Agassizii and the Cockatoides. They've bred. I've had babies. They survive just fine, but they breed better when you're closer to that pH of 7, slightly under. Where the shell dwellers, that's perfect for us because the shell dwellers, they like that hard water with a high pH. So now we're in the upper 7s at least, us for our 8 to 8.2 and our GH and KH of a 10. They breed like crazy for us. So it's all about where your water parameters are. And trust me, it's easier when you're thinking about breeding to get the fish that are going to breed naturally in your water than trying to chase these water parameters. And people do it, but it's just more of a pain. Vibe says lurking and making dinner. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. You know what I want right now?
Let me guess. Wings.
No, I don't want wings.
Pizza.
No, I want pizza for tomorrow.
Wow. What would you want?
It's a place that we sometimes go.
It's supposed to help me?
But it's not a dinner food. It starts with a D, ends with an airy, and the second word starts with a Q.
Oh,
and ends
ice
with
cream?
E.
Really?
Yeah, I want a soft serve Dairy Queen swirl dipped in chocolate. Yeah, that's what I want right now.
Interesting.
No, I said tacos. Tacos are Portillo's. Dude, come on, Christopher. Don't be talking about Portillo. You know what happened to me last week? Let me explain something to you. Last week, I'm sitting around in office hours with my students, and one of my students starts talking about how she's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. She's a fitness person, like loves to work out. And she's like, I, for some reason, have been craving more and more McDonald's. And we were talking about how much, like, and it's just crazy to me, like how you can crave something. And all of a sudden we were talking about it.
Oh boy.
And right after school, I had to have McDonald's Coke and I had to have a cheeseburger. And it was like, Portillo's is another one. There was a summer where, for some reason, it was a night class. It was a summer night class. And every once in a while, we got on the topic of food. And Portillo's came up like 3 or 4 times that summer. And every single time it came up, I drove down to Portillo's. And what was funnier is when I would get there in the line, you'd see other students were there too. Yep.
That's funny.
I know. Well, Mr. All-Star, where are your accents from? Well, it depends on what you're talking about. I've got many accents from all over the world. I do. I once convinced a student that I was Irish because they walked in. Actually, it wasn't a student. It was a friend of a student. And I just started talking like that. And they thought I was from Ireland. And then when I switched to my normal voice, they were like, wait, what happened? I'm not saying it's a very good one, but it was good enough to fake them out. So where are we? Where are our accents from? Hers is worse. That's what I always hear.
Yeah,
She's
apparently.
Like, hey, yo. That there? That there. So I'll give you a hint. Yeah, we're gonna go down to the Jewels. We're gonna get some food, some groceries. Then we're gonna come back. We're gonna sit on the couch in our front room and watch the Bears.
You got it. Yeah. Chicago. From Chicago. Now, apparently I grew up closer to Chicago and just a little bit north, so I've got more of the Wisconsin sort of.
No, it's not Wisconsin. It's the closer you get to Chicago, the more of the that dares you get. And you've got it pretty bad. And that was because you grew up in the suburbs, like right outside the city, where
Thank you very much.
When I was a very small child, grew up in the southern suburbs, far from the city. And so actually I was more of like a southerner type of kid. I mean, I didn't have like a southern accent or anything, but it was just, we didn't have the Chicago dat dares coming at us. Yeah.
Whip says that you need to go to Bensonville and grab yourself a beef sausage combo at Bocce. right on 83.
No.
Trust me,
You
he
need
said.
to go to Gene and Jude's over there and get yourself a hot dog and some fries with no ketchup.
No, then go to Superdog and get the fries on top of the hot dog.
That's what Gene and Jude's does too.
Well,
They started
Superdog has hot dogs on top of the whole freaking building, so take that.
Well, all right then. Yeah. All right. Abby says, yeah, just finding out as much as possible at the moment. I have a pH of about 7.3 to 4. So was either thinking of trying to lower the pH or just going Tanganyikan. Just got a 40-gallon breeder. Going up might be easier for you. Again, if you do like the Carib Sea African cichlid mix or you do the aragonite as your substrate, that might actually buffer it a little bit higher. If you're going to go lower, if your KH is relatively high, you're probably going to have to start mixing in some RO water. That's the best way to do it. I know there's other ways that people try, but definitely the way is using RO and then having to remineralize or just doing like a 50-50 split or a 75-25 and see where you're at. Christopher says Gene and Jude's has been there forever. Yeah, I haven't been there in forever. I don't even know if it's got to be still there, right?
I don't even know if I've ever been there. Ever been there? You would
I've
think.
been there a million times, yeah, but it was like in high school.
Yeah, but I don't know if I've ever been there.
Let's see here. Hudifa, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. What was it like studying marine biology? I actually did not study marine biology. So my undergrad was in bio. I majored in bio, minored in chemistry. Then I did a master's degree in biotechnology and chemical science, which was kind of a mix of, well, as you would expect, like a applied molecular biology and chemistry, where the chemistry degree, that part of the master's program was like instrumental analysis, PChem, advanced inorganic, advanced organic, some pretty cool stuff. In the advanced organic, it was the advanced organic. We actually got to theoretically synthesize our own chemicals, and then I went on and did a master's cert in aquaculture and fish health, which was really cool. I did that through the University of Florida, and I'll tell you that program was outstanding. So the aquaculture and fish health is the one that probably applied most, although I spent a lot of time studying microbiology too, which obviously applies a lot to what we do in the aquarium hobby, which is very interesting to me. So the nitrifying bacteria, stuff like that. Yeah.
All right, John Wood's here. Hey, he has a question he's looking for a different food for his baby bristlenose. Besides rapashi, tofu, and assorted vegetables. Anything different?
Kelp wafers, the Northland kelp wafers, you could do those. All those foods that you're talking about are best. I'm assuming you've probably got sand in the tank, but like the rapashi, the tofu, any type of algae wafer. The one thing that's tough is when they eat it, it starts to disintegrate. And if it's gravel, it falls in there, and you really got to gravel vac that stuff out. Otherwise, you start getting detritus worms and water quality issues. So all of that is either better bare bottom or on sand. But you could do the kelp wafers from Northfin. That's actually real plant matter and not just binder and fish meal. So you could try that. I've fed fry bloodworms. Not a lot, but I'll throw bloodworms in there and they'll eat that too and munch on it.
All right, Amanda, this is an interesting question. I have peppered cories in with a bristlenose pleco, nearite snails, and pseudomuglies.
Pseudomogil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who is likely eating the cory eggs?
All right, say that again.
Peppered cories in with bristlenose pleco. Oh, yeah?
Bristlenose are chowing those things down pretty much instantly. As soon as the cories are laying those, the bristlenose are like, hey, all right, I'll just follow right behind you. Thanks for the little snack here. Really appreciate it. Yeah, for sure. Oink says, I'm a proud trader to my New York roots in one way. Thin New York pizza? Boo. Chicago deep dish pizza? Yep. Every day consuming would make Oink happy. Well, that's funny you mention that because I, believe it or not, am not a deep dish pizza guy. I like just the regular crust, thin crust. Sometimes I'll do a double dough, but it's just got to be like the normal crust. Like the deep dish, I'll eat it, but it's just not. When I eat pizza, you have to understand, when you put a pizza in front of me, I'm double fisting the pizza and I'm just plowing it down because I want to eat as much as I can before my stomach realizes that I'm full.
It's true.
Deep dish, A, it always comes out way too hot, so you're going to burn your mouth.
Eat it with a knife and fork until
B,
it cools off, and then...
Yeah, you got to use utensils because you can't just pick that stuff up and start slapping it because you got the sauce everywhere. It's falling out. And then the cheese is so cheesy that you're going to choke and die if you eat that stuff too fast. So I don't want to choke and die on my pizza cheese. I just want to be able to plow it down. And
it's all really weird.
That's regular pizza for me, man.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
You're just not real Chicago folk. That's okay.
Whip says I'll have to try Gene and Juice. Yeah, it's worth a try. Definitely worth a try.
Second Floor Aquatics. Hey,
What's
Ryan and
up?
Shannon. Just listening to all the classes you have taken for your degrees makes my head hurt. Mine too. So glad you did it, and I can just pick your brain now when needed.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I often think about
Nerd.
If I did another master's program, what would it be? I actually started to do one, and I forgot about that. The other one that I started to do, but I didn't finish it because I was doing it for school, and then I reached a point where I had gotten to a threshold that I needed, and I stopped, but I regret it now. And that was a soil science. I was doing a soil science cert.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, it was like bioremediation and soil science, and that was actually really cool. But life got really busy, and I knew I wasn't going to have the time to properly devote to finishing that degree as well.
And sleep.
But yeah, and sleep and do YouTube type stuff. But I wish I would like to go back and finish that one. Nate said, thank you so much for the super chat. Hey guys, long time stalker, no time chatter. Well, glad you're here. Starlight Pleco babies, cool, and a 75-gallon with a medium gold nugget Pleco. How do I make sure my babies are getting fed? Well, I think if that were my situation, I would probably spread the food around a little bit. And if you're going to be using Rapashi or like John uses the tofu or whatever you're using, just make sure you've got some, because your adults are going to get there right away, and your babies are probably going to form a pile, and just make sure that they've got their own little bricks of food everywhere. And they'll get enough. I mean, they're so tiny. It's not like it takes a lot to fill them up. So if you're moving it around where like, okay, my big boys are over here, they're eating, let me drop some over here on other parts where they can find it. That's kind of what I would do. I mean, worst case is when they get big enough, you could start removing them, putting them in another tank and spot feeding them that way. Marley says, I'm hungry now. Yeah, I am getting more hungry as time passes.
Kyle says, should I use ChemiClean to get rid of cyanobacteria? Never used it before.
I don't like using chemicals to deal with algae because it's not taking care of the root cause, whether that's light or nutrients. I would prefer just a multi-pronged approach of controlling my light, controlling my nitrates, 20 parts per million or less, making sure if it's a planted tank, I'm not adding too much liquid fertilizer that's making the problem worse. And then, yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of elbow grease on the glass. Maybe you're using an algae scraper, at least on the front. And then rely on some of the inhabitants if you can. So if it's a smaller tank, you've got your snails, like your nearite snails, your mystery snails. If it's a larger tank, now you're starting to look at your plecos, like your clown. It's larger, I mean like a 10-gallon, you got your clown plecos, 20-gallon, you've got your bristlenose. If it's a big tank, then like in our 150, we've got, I don't know how many bristlenose are in there. I'm pretty sure there's at least 10 bristlenose in that 150. And in some of our 125s, it's not uncommon to have 4, 5, or 6 of them, and they keep the tanks looking pretty good.
So that works for algae or cyanobacteria?
Well, cyanobacteria, no.
That was the question.
Oh, it's cyanobacteria. No, I still wouldn't do that. I would still try to control it by water changes. I would personally rather use a UV light. So get a UV light, and that will wipe it out, because the chemicals are going to be harmful, right? One of the things that we talk about in microbiology is anytime a chemical destroys life, there is a certain amount of toxicity for other living things, even if it's not the target of those living things. It's something called selective toxicity. Yes, most of the chemicals selectively target a pathogen, or in this case, algae. And even though that organism is very different than, let's say, a fish or shrimp or snails, there is still going to be a point at which that chemical is lethal or at least harmful to other living things. So I really don't like using chemicals to destroy life in a tank if I can avoid it. Like I know people like, oh, I've got a snail problem. I'm just going to throw a bunch of copper safe in the tank. Well, yeah, that killed some of your snails, but it also fouled up your water, which you could also do with the cyanobacteria. If that stuff all starts to die, you could actually create water quality issues doing that. So with the cyanobacteria, the UV light is not solving the problem, the root cause either, but at least it's strictly focused on the cyanobacteria, and you don't have a whole lot of other issues with other types of living things being harmed by it. What say you? Anything? Timothy says, will two different types of plecos coexist? Depends on the size of the tank, but they often do. I mean, I've got all kinds of different bristlenose plecos in with one another. They coexist. I've got bristlenose in with blue phantoms. That's fine. I've got bristlenose in with clown plecos. Works out fine. Bristlenose in with snowball plecos. It's worked out fine. Now, the males sometimes, yeah, they can get a little bit combative, especially around feeding time. But often it works out. Not always, but it often does. All right, we'll take one or two more, a couple more. And then we're going to call it an evening, and you guys can all get your wings, your pizza, your McDonald's, your Portillo's, your Gene and Jude's, a dipped ice cream cone, whatever you need to get, because you know how healthy it is to eat right before dinner time, right?
Yes.
Well, I'll just have an unhealthy night tonight because of things. All right, what else here? What do we got here? Marissa says, how do you avoid fish having babies? I don't have a strong community willing to give them homes. I don't worry about it. For most part, if you have fish in a community tank, most of the time, if they have babies, they get eaten. Or even guppies. I always tell people, like, oh my gosh, my guppies are breeding. Okay, well, even in a 20-gallon, you put a dwarf gourami in there, you're going to see a lot less guppy babies. That stuff is going to end. So like your guppies, your platies, your endlers, you get a decent size 2 or 3 inch fish, most of the time they get eaten. Like we don't actually have, other than our shell dwellers and our Cyprichromis when they're in their breeding mode, bristlenose plecos, because they're in a bristlenose pleco breeding tank only. The rest of our fish, even the ones that lay eggs, even the cichlids, we've got all those mouth brooding Mbuna and peacock cichlids. I see them holding all the time. I never see babies because all the other fish in the tank, as soon as they spit them out, fish food. They all go away. I've never actually seen them do it, but they got to be doing it because I never see any fry. So that's how I think about it. Let's see here. Amissa, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Cleanup crew suggestions for a 22 long with sparkling gourami, CPDs, sand substrate planted with manzanita wood. 22 long, that's a big tank. That's a 3-foot tank. So bristlenose plecos are fine. Clown plecos are fine. You could do mystery snails, nearite snails if you don't want to go the bristlenose or the clown pleco route. Rubber lip plecos would probably work just fine. So yeah, I think any of those could be really good options.
And you said clown plecos, right?
Yeah, clown, rubber lip, and bristlenose in a 22 long, because that's a 3-foot tank. So that's, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. All right, everybody. I think we're going to call it a night. We're going to go have some snacks. You guys have some snacks. A lot of awesome questions. You guys, it was brung today. You guys brung it. I love it. So
really
thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening. Go get a snack. And we'll see you hopefully next week. Same time, same place.
Thanks to all of our moderators.
And all the super chats. Really
and lurkers.
Appreciate it. Yeah. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.